carers in an area which we have always struggled. We work very hard to recruit foster carers and improve their lot. And a lot of the things that we do are what I call soft, in terms of improving relationships with foster carers, giving them access to senior managers, being responsive to them, creating a community for them. It's a lot of work, but we often stand still because as our ageing population of foster carers retire or they move or their circumstances change, the number rarely goes up, significantly. However, what it means is we have a stable population of foster carers, and that means we can give better stability. What we have been able to achieve is that we've seen the number of the use of foster carers, internal in-house foster carers increase, and a reduction in the number of independent fostering agencies who were profit-driven. So that's for the first time again in the last 3 years, the strategy has been able to support that. We are aware of the homelessness legislation, which will be coming into I think it's just been passed in the early stages at the Senate for implementation between 2027 and 2031, which will give increased priority for our care leave in our care experience to young people, and a responsibility around the homelessness of young people. However, the detail of that will need to be moved on. What we do recognise, though, is the ongoing complexity that we see with presenting children, and that follows young people through their care history and as they leave the service and they are supported into adulthood. Children's Services' vision is that we are raising adults, and as we do with our own children, what we do is make sure then we've got increased planning, care planning, and ensuring the children and young people are increasingly involved in their own care planning, so they feel that they have some level of ownership. Since the pandemic, we have seen increased mental health problems. We've seen increased social media linked difficulties for young people. So we are continuing to issue to court, which is what tends to be the thing that makes children looked after, is that they're subject to an order. So we are not decreasing the amount of work that goes into court. What we are seeing are better outcomes for those young people who may return home. They may live on a supervision order. They may go to family members as special guardianship orders. So we've seen increases in that. And there's better outcomes for children, so their outcome isn't that they are separated from their families. Where obviously some children do need to be separated, as I say, we have a plan within our, stop calling it the back door, our long-term support team, which will, a development plan, which is actively looking at how we support our young people to access education, social activities, repair relationships with their families, so as they become moved into the care experience, they are better prepared for ongoing life as an adult. There's obviously a budgetary and a financial context. Children's Services have had significant savings to make within the council, but many of those have come because we have been able to be very proactive and invest in increased foster care, in-house foster carers, but also children returning home being on an order with family members. So what that means is we are not paying the large cost of residential units, which could be between £6,000 and £19,000 per week. So we aren't paying that level. So we have been able to make our savings. However, within that, there is a financial context as to how much we can invest. And I think we have to be realistic in that. So as I said, placement sufficiency, we have a fostering strategy and a fostering recruitment strategy. And we've had the ongoing development of children's residential units, We have one operational, where the feedback from the independent reviewing officer who monitors the care plans for the children has been very positive for how settled they are. Neighbours are very happy with that. And we have one in a 4-bedroom home in Caldecott due to open in August, and a 4-bedroom children's home. I'm just trying to think. Will be late on around the same time this summer. We are anticipating that will be open. We are also developing our 16, what we call our 16 plus, for 16 to 18-year-olds, to support young people to learn their independence skills and to move forward. So when they exit care, we are now working with housing, RSLs, and private landlords to explore how we expand housing for 18 plus for our care experienced young people. As we said, we've had significant service development thanks to grants that we've used well to develop children's and increase their ability to manage family relationships and revisit family relationships, because we recognise that many of our care experienced young people, when they leave care, will actually move back towards family or have more contact with family, and it's our duty to make sure we can make those as safe as possible. We've had increased participation and engagement with our young people. We do that as part of as children looked after, but also what we do is make sure that there are lots for our care experienced young people, so they have a shared experience. So we've been able to do really great things, like we've taken them to the Senate, we've taken them to London, which many of these young people haven't done ever before. They've met with MPs, they've met with the council, they meet regularly with the council through the corporate parenting panel. They had a fabulous time in Chinatown. They've been able to expand, because we've also recognised is that whilst we recognise that participation and access to the counsellors and access to corporate parenting is important, we have a responsibility for their cultural development too, and giving them opportunities to see it outside. We are recognising that we have an increasing number of young people who are NEET, not in education, employment or training. And when we look at that, that's a lot about mental well-being. It's also about some young people are not in a good place due to their history and their trauma to be in those positions. We have a very clear plan with our children and our young people, particularly our care experience, through our young people's advisors, in order to continue to support that, because the young people may not be ready at 18 or 19. We have a high number of young people who access college, but then they can't sustain that, so they exit. But that isn't the end of their journey. So it's very important that we continue to support them. And there's plans to look at, now we are looking at apprenticeships, other employment opportunities, where perhaps within the council we can be a bit more flexible whilst children and young people develop those skills and that resilience, because it is the resilience quite often that those young people do not have. We have an action plan which is there, and the plan is that we will continue. It's a high level action plan. Measures been put in place where possible, that there's an evidence base which will progress and be monitored, and there is a plan to give an update, to present midpoint reports to full council, so you can see what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Can I thank Diane for that? I just think it's incredible. It just gives, hopefully, anyone watching at home and the councillors present, the full kind of remit of what the service does, the support to those children and young people, and actually giving them the skills to develop into well-rounded adults and into their sort of, adult years, hopefully in employment, having a quality of life that you if you don't get the sort of building blocks right at the very beginning, then you need to have that sort of support around them. I know that members of the committee have got some questions to ask, but I just want to thank you, Diane, and the staff, because I know that, Penny and myself get an insight on the corporate parenting panel, but also the work done by foster carers. The young people's advisors always strikes me as, the creativity. I mean, to go out and find little pots of money that they can take a group of people to Parliament, to meet their local MP, to actually begin to understand the democratic sort of process is way beyond, the sort of working, their sort of working remit, really. So, can I open up the questions? I see Councillor Edwards has got his hand up. Do you want to ask your question, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Chandler and Diane, for presenting this draft strategy this morning. It was a wonderful strategy to read. It's nice to read strategies like that rather than something a bit less passionate. Looking at this from 3 points of view, I mean, first of all, the involvement of care experienced children. Could you tell us more about this? I mean, you mentioned that obviously the report mentions that they come to, I've forgotten what it's called now, a corporate parenting panel twice a year at least. But how were care experienced children and young people involved in writing this strategy in the first place? And how do we know their input changed the final document? And also, how often does Cabinet hear directly from young people? Like I said, we can see that the corporate parenting panel meets twice a year and hears from young people. So could you share with us how this shapes the policy overall?
We've got much better, I think, in the last 3 years in terms of giving them both formal and informal avenues to express their opinion and be heard. So yes, we have 2 meetings a year with the corporate parenting panel where they're supported by their young people's advisor to come forward. Those are a rolling, changing number of people, because obviously some people feel more able to do that or not. The young people's advisors make sure that all the young people are spoken to, the care experienced young people are spoken to, so they can advise what's important to them. Invariably, what is important to them is access to employment or to appropriate training, which isn't free because they don't want to feel exploited. It's about shaping our, about education, access to education, employment, and usually accommodation. So that is what they raise as their most important things. Also about mental well-being, all of those things. So those things are actually the drivers for things such as how we're building and developing, particularly 18 plus accommodation, and how we shape that. What I will say also is that they have opportunities to come and visit our residential homes as we're building them. So then they're able to give their thoughts and opinions on that, what was important for them when they were there. And also within our foster care community, we meet with them and they sit on panels for employing staff. They sit on panels for fostering foster carers. We are now working to ensure care experienced young people have the access to, when we're writing strategies, to read those, have a young person friendly documents so they can be supported to read those. So what we're doing constantly is feeding them in. We take a broad spectrum to the young people because we recognise that it's really easy to have the same young people who are articulate, less trauma-driven, who are perhaps at higher education standards, more politically, with a small p, aware of their life. So what we try to do is not include those children all the time, so hence the rolling programme of young people that we work with. As we've extended now the working and development to 14 plus young people. So we used to have a 16 plus team. We now have a 14 plus team. So those young people are pivotal rather than wait until they're getting to the end of their journey, that they're informing how we develop services from 14 plus onwards. And our IRO, we're very fortunate in Monmouthshire to have a really, really good IRO. We have one, which is a whole issue, independent reviewing officer. She is responsible for overseeing the care plans of all children and undertaking reviews. She knows the young people, she meets with the young people, she hears their voice, and she writes us reports and speaks to us as a Children's Services leadership team about what's going on for young people sort of directly. Because she is the only one, the upside of that is that she knows the children she manages all the children's cases. So she's met them, she speaks to them, they know her, they feel safe with her. So we have that. In terms of when they feed back to Cabinet, I'm looking at Ian. Sorry, Councillor Chandler.
Yeah, no, I think on that, and it's a good question, Councillor Edwards. So thank you for raising it. And I think in terms of the specifics of your question as well, in terms of how much have care experienced young people been involved in developing the strategy, in terms of we've not had a round table where we've presented the strategy to them and asked for their feedback, because we don't feel that is the right way forward. But their thoughts that we've gathered through the different interactions with them have run through this and have informed most of the changes that we put in. In terms of Cabinet, clearly corporate parenting panel includes myself as Cabinet member for social care and safeguarding, but also Councillor Sandals as Cabinet member for engagement. So both of us as Cabinet members are on the corporate parenting panel. And when we have those engagement events, we sometimes invite other Cabinet members in. So rather than bringing care experienced people to Cabinet, we Cabinet members go to that. So, for example, Councillor Birch, in her role of responsibility for housing, has come to one of those engagement sessions to talk with them about the challenges and the very real challenges that care leavers face in housing. I know this as my own children are transitioning into independence, that the requirements for having a guarantor for a tenancy, for a shared house, it's onerous, and for people that don't have that family support around them, it is really challenging. So housing is a big issue for our care leavers. So Councillor Birch has been there to really engage with that. Councillor Brocklesby has also attended one of the sessions where we've invited her so that she hears firsthand some of the issues that care experienced young people are having. So we try to build that in as much as we can, and obviously when it's come to education as well, obviously, so Councillor Grocott and Councillor Wright have, in their roles as Cabinet Member for Education, have also had engagement in the process. But we feel it is really important. So thank you for highlighting that, Councillor Edwards. It's an important issue.
Thank you for, so let's finish on with that. Thank you for those thorough answers. One thing that did come out from the strategy is the concern over staff. For instance, they mentioned about the instability of the long-term support team with some disruption. How do we ensure that this is unlikely to happen again? That's one aspect of it. And obviously the other aspect of it is the significant staff turnover of personnel within the child looked after nursing service, which has led to increased delay of children's health reviews being undertaken. I mean, it looks quite alarming when you look at the figures, approximately 76 children and care leavers, and that is the backlog. It sounds like a major issue, although you mentioned that there's now a regional approach. So could you tell us more about this approach and how this is going?
At the time of writing that, there were 76 children. This has been raised at senior level regionally with the Health Board, which is why there is a regional approach. What we have found is that backlog is being managed far more quickly. So we're looking now at 35 children with a backlog. There is only so much we can do, and we're, to an extent, powerless to move that forward. I think it was an unprecedented delay in being able to put that person, the right person in the right place. I think there are challenges with recruitment, and I think the changing face of the club, the looked after population, is part of the challenge for that. We have far more children with very complex needs, and I think that has changed the face of what it meant to work with these children. So I think part of the difficulty has been for both health and social care has been recruiting the right people who are experienced in this type of work. There is far more child protection work. There is far more work with young people with mental health problems. There is far more work with children with very challenging behaviour, and that we are no longer talking about a settled, looked after population. So there was a lag, I think, for people catching up. In terms of, we keep very close eye on the number of children going through to the review, and we report that through the Safeguarding Board, as well as with regards to the health board meetings and partnership board meetings we have with health. It's been a challenge, I will say, but I think we're on top of it now, but that's the assurance I can give.
Thank you.
Do you want to make any further comments, Councillor Edwards? Are you?
No, that's fine.
Okay. I've got Councillor Butler first, and then Councillor Grandcott.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Edwards has just asked one of my questions. Thank you very much for your answer, and thank you very much, both of you, for your report. Moving on to Section 6, your key achievements, and the recruitment of foster carers. The target for this coming year, 26-27, is 10 for foster carers. But I noticed that you didn't actually meet targets in the 2 years prior. So what's going on in that field to try and get those 10 this year, please?
I think the maturity of the placement of the foster care recruitment strategy. Monmouthshire struggles, and we have always struggled, and we will never have enough. And I think we have to accept we are never going to have enough. That's partly to do with mostly to do with our demographic, that we have older people. We have people who want to retire here. We have people who don't necessarily want to have some of our more challenging young people. And I think the rural nature of where we live is a challenge for us to recruit. I think what we have now is a maturity. We have a very clear vision that actually what is best in Monmouthshire is what we call the drip, drip, drip effect of making fostering appear like a real option, because we don't have people who are necessarily like our sister authorities such as Blaenau Gwent or Caerphilly, where they have people who see it as a career. We have people who are far more here wanting to do a good thing. So I think what we do is we have over the last 3 years highlighted all over the place. So we are at hundreds of events a year, putting out our stall. We have lots of engagement. I think Foster Wales has been really helpful for us to not just work regionally and nationally, but actually be able to target and hone down our message for people. This year we have currently 14 people in assessment. So this year we are expecting to meet our target. Our challenge will be how to support those people to take children in a measured way and make sure that they're safe and they're secure, rather than sort of give them a pile of children to look after. So we're doing that in a very measured way. But we are also very aware of our population decreasing at the other end. So it is always about to stay in the same place, but ensure we have good quality foster care.
Just supplement that as well, because I think part of that challenge that we faced with recruiting foster carers, as Diane's already said, is obviously part of our demographic and the context that we've got here. But we shouldn't also discount the competition that we faced from independent commercial fostering agencies. which has been a real challenge for us because although the people that work for those fostering agencies are, I'm sure, very good foster parents, well-meaning, the very nature, though, of commercial companies being involved in this market, knowing that it's a statutory duty for us to place children looked after with foster parents as we can, meant that they could effectively charge us what they wanted. So they were able to pay foster carers more than we were able to pay them, and then having cornered that market, able to put their prices up to charge us some fairly substantial sums. And I think this is one of the motivations for the Welsh Government's move to eliminate profit from the care of looked after children. And I think, and it's also then made us really look at our offer in terms of both the financial offer, which is why we raised our fees, not to the level that independent agencies pay, but to a more comparable level, so the difference isn't too big, but also to look at all the wraparound support that we give from, whether it is, the council tax reductions, leisure centre memberships, but also, as Diane said, the soft side, the supporting element that actually makes us really feel like our foster carers, our in-house foster carers, are part of our family, our fostering family. And that, I think that's what's turned it round. So it's been a bit of an uphill struggle, but I think we've really, we've reached where we need to be, and now it's happening, and we should be reaping the dividends over the course of this strategy over the next 3 years. So,
thank you both. Very interesting what you say about career foster carers. In other areas, I think you specified Blaenau Gwent and Caerphilly. We need more of that, I think. We need a campaign possibly where we're talking about this as a career and recruiting people into a career and giving them training and support. So that's what they know that they're going into. So I think that might be a very good way forward. I did have one other question, if I may. We're talking about the ongoing complexity of presenting children. Do you think that COVID has actually had an impact on that?
I think the pandemic has been, I still don't think we know what the outcome of the pandemic is. What we've seen since then is a significant rise in mental health and emotional well-being. I think that goes hand in hand alongside social media, which I think is a constant pressure for young people. And I think those are the elements alongside the presentation of parents who are highly dysfunctional. So we have a lot of domestic abuse, drug and alcohol misuse. So there's never one thing to be able to target. So we have young people growing up with a lot of pressure from what comes from societal pressure, but within families that haven't been able to manage those and support their children. So what you end up with is children with very complex needs and quite challenging behaviour. That takes a lot of support in order. And sometimes what we're able to do is have children come into care whilst we work with parents and slowly rehabilitate children home. And that would always be our preferred way. And we've had an increase in the number of children still being classified as looked after, however, now residing back with their parents. They're still on a care order to the local authority, but they're under what we call placement with parents regulations. So that means that we have shared parental responsibility. We continue a programme of work with the family and with the young person. However, what they do is they're able to reside in their families as safely as possible. So we've seen an increased number of young people. So when we look at our whole number, that doesn't always tell us the picture of where children are living. They're not necessarily in a formal foster placement or a formal residential placement. They may be with family and they may be at home with their parents, but still on an order to the local authority. So we share parental responsibility.
Thank you very much for that, about the sharing of parental responsibility. I wasn't aware of that. I think that's a very good way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Before I'm changing the order of people with hands up, and I'm going to bring Councillor Jones in a minute. But I just wanted to add, and I'm sure that calling the support sort of soft in relation to the support offered to foster carers, it's more than just sort of soft support. I mean, I know from my experience as a social worker many years ago, if a foster carer knows that they've got that reassurance or experience or knowledge at the end of a phone, that means much more. And if you can retain your current foster carers with that level of support, which is probably what they get from the independent fostering agencies with their very small caseloads and, you know, extra sort of financial inducements as well. So I just wanted to sort of flag that. I know that you didn't mean it was, you know, less than that they actually do.
Sorry about that. When we talk about soft, I suppose it's because in a safeguarding world we talk about soft intelligence. When we say soft, what we're saying is these aren't things that we can give. These are things we can include people in. So we have developed really a fostering community. So they have access we have coffee and catch up. So senior managers, myself, my service managers will go to that. And that travels around the county in garden centre coffee shops. So we can meet with people and hear straight directly from them what the issues are with foster carers. We have a partnership working group with foster carers that they work with the team managers and social workers to improve the relationship with children's services and actively be involved in the shaping of the direction, some of the documents we use, some of the processes we use. So it's that sort of thing we're talking about when we say soft. Sorry.
Thank you for that clarification. Can I bring in Councillor Jones and then I'll bring in Councillor Grocott? Simon, do you want to come in after that? Your hand's gone down, but let's take Councillor Jones first off because I know that she's got to go fairly soon. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Chair, and I'm sorry to everybody else. But just carrying on from that a moment, I'd like to make a comment about the foster carers. The private agencies, etc., paid far more, but we have had cases of foster carers coming to Monmouthshire because they decided that money wasn't everything. It was the all-encompassing care that they got and support that they got in Monmouthshire that helped them to come over. And you can speak to these people, you know, at the functions we attend, like the Christmas parties and things like that. And they're so happy to be part of the Monmouthshire system. So from the horse's mouth, so to speak. But I was just going to make a comment because I've been a member of the board for many, many years. But I'm just going to say that it's quite humbling being a member of the corporate parenting panel because, you know, we're surrounded by people who deserve so much more than they've been offered in life normally. And you can try and be part of the team that helps them. And to that end, I'd just like to say thank you to Diane and Charlotte and the whole team, and especially to Deb, Mike and Lindsay, the personal advisors who do so much more above and beyond caring for young care leavers and care experienced children, because without them, you know, they would have nothing. It helps them to go forward, to lead an independent life, to have skills, to, you know, be safeguarded, to have advocacy and representation. They've got help in every aspect of their lives, and that means such a lot. We do not just drop them, we see right through the path. So thank you for that opportunity to say that, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Penny, and I'm sure that will be fed back by Diane to her sort of team members. So that's great. Thank you. I've lost my thread now. I think it's Councillor Grocott now. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And Diane, thank you so much for the report. It was written with clarity, and even I could understand it. So that's always a good start. And it is good to be reminded as a councillor of our personal responsibilities as councillors for young people who you look after. And I think you did that very well this morning, so thank you for that. And as I was listening to you talking about just a range of complexity that people bring to the service. I was reflecting that 4 years ago I was sat on the main railway station in Berlin, watching train after train of refugees fleeing the Russian invasion, and families with a bag, and that was all that they could flee their country with. And just looking at the number of young people and mothers, because you didn't have to think very hard that most of the dads were still trying to defend their country. And that's something that will be with me my whole life, I think, having witnessed that. But I've got just a simple question, you'll be pleased to know. And that is that in your key issues part of your report, in paragraph 3.2, you talk about one of the areas for placement being with family and friends. Yes, family I can well understand. Friends gives me a little disquiet. And I suppose in the back of my mind are safeguarding issues. Who decides if a friend is suitable to oversee the life and the promotion of life of a young person? And how do you measure outcomes and success of placements with friends?
There are very clear regulations there's very clear regulations in regards to who constitutes what we call a connected person. So we have foster carers, and we have kinship carers, where there is definitely a family connection, and then we have connected carers. These are people quite often who know these children very well, so they may not be a blood relative, but they are well-intentioned, they are caring people, they have a connection to the young person. So they may be a school friend's mother, they may be people who, particularly in regards to our UASC unaccompanied asylum-seeking young people, they may be people from a different ethnic background to White Welsh who could offer a home, who have some level of connection with that young person via a mosque or through education or whatever that is. And in that, there are the same levels of inquiries, checks, safeguarding checks, training, and they are usually going through a court process. So what we would do is, if the child's case is still in court, that would be overseen by a child's guardian. If it's not in court, what I would say is they would definitely be overseen by an independent reviewing officer and a fostering panel. So they would have to be presented to the fostering panel. So the assessments that are undertaken are exactly the same. The safeguarding checks are exactly the same. And when they are connected people, they are still technically come under our fostering regulations, perhaps not at such a high level in terms of our expectation of training that we have of our foster carers, but certainly they would be expected to access training. And what we've done now is try to incorporate and encourage them to be part of our fostering community, so they can be supported by foster carers. So we have a lot of those connected people come to our coffee and catch-ups and come to our Christmas parties and things like that, in order our celebration events, and we're developing that more. Obviously, as a good, well-meaning person who thinks I could help this young person who's my son's friend to get through education because he's only got 2 years left to go or something, they don't always want to be involved in extracurricular activities. However, what we do is we have that statutory responsibility to ensure safeguarding, assessment, ongoing work with that young person, and that young person will still be on an order to the local authority, so we will continue to have shared parental responsibility.
Do you want to make any no further comments? I'm gonna, if Councillor Powell's okay, can I bring in Councillor Howarth, because I think the order got a bit confused. So if I bring in Councillor Howarth first, and then Councillor Powell, you'll be next. Yeah, thank you.
Chair, I only dropped off because Penny, I know had to go, so I just dropped out of it. So it shoved Penny up the front, that was all, Chair. So I am quite happy for Maureen to come before me, no problem.
Councillor Powell, thank you.
Yes, actually, what I was going to say, I had a couple of questions I was going to ask you, but you have actually now, in the process, answered them for me. The one was about the increase in people, and you say it's less now. That was the one question. Another question's been answered by other people. So thank you very much. So I want to say thank you for the presentation. It was so in depth, and it's I've got a lot of notes here, and I found it very interesting. And to thank you very much.
Councillor Howarth, do you want to come in next?
Yeah, that's great, Chair. Thank you. And thank you both for your report this morning. I just want to go back and ask you a couple of questions on the private sector there. I've had a couple of cases in my ward where the private sector has been applying for residential properties to be turned into care homes. As we all know, that's a scenario going on at the moment. I noticed in Monmouthshire there has been quite a few private carers turning residential properties into care homes, which is great for one aspect, but not for the other aspect. How many children do we have actually in the private sector at the moment? As from the 1st of April 2026, the private sector actually will be closed down because no new applications will be allowed to be registered. Is that correct, or am I hearing different on that one? Because the case I've been involved with, the applicant is through national parks. Of course, they have to go through full planning unless consent is given in a different way. So there are different aspects of planning permission being sought for private sectors, and I suppose as a county council as well, we would have to gain planning permission for our properties also, where we take them out of domestic into care as well. So that's my two questions really. Is the time frame of April the 1st being closed down for the private sector, and how many children do we actually have in the private sector in Monmouthshire, which could actually come back to us with having to find a need for them in some kind of format? Thank you, Chair.
In terms of the number of Monmouthshire children in private placements in Monmouthshire, we've only got 2 young people. They will serve out their time, if you know what I mean there, because there's no good reason to move them. That's been their permanent home for a number of years, so it would be unnecessarily cruel to move them. And within the timescale of the government, which is 2030, really 2029, 2030, for the elimination of profit agenda to be fully sustained and fully implemented. And we know those young people, and we're working well with them for their next plans moving forward. There are approximately 35 beds that are part of private care homes in Monmouthshire. You are correct that from April 2026, no new for-profit homes will be allowed to be registered in Wales. And then actually for CIW, the Care Inspectorate Wales, who are the registration body, they haven't accepted new applications for registration past December 2025, just because there isn't timescale to pass those through until the April 26 deadline. In regards to the private homes that are already operating, they will be continued to operate until the government are clearer about what exactly are the final forms of transitioning over to not-for-profit businesses. That has why the deadline's been extended so long, because it's still not clear. What I will say is we've been approached by 2 for-profit agencies to ask what it is they can do with their homes in Monmouthshire that may be suitable for our children. So that may be in terms of disabled respite, things like that. What is it that we would be looking for? Because the government haven't yet clarified what exemptions there will be for some private agencies and for some children. Obviously, moving children out of their homes where they've been there for a long time is not, or shutting homes down isn't preferable. So what the government are doing is still working through that. So you are right, December 25 was the last time CIW was taking registrations. April 26 will be the last time, and then April 27 will be the last time for recruitment of private foster carers. So it will be a slow-moving thing, but what we try to do within children's services is to continue to make contacts with our for-profit companies, because it will be a good thing to be able to either know what's happening or be able to potentially utilise some of those properties or utilise some of those staff. So we keep our hand in, basically.
Thank you, and that's great to hear. Just a final question then. So going back to the staff issue, and it's been mentioned previous, the private sector seems to actually attract the staff. I don't think they, in my eyes, they don't seem to struggle finding the staff. Is that because of the pay scales that they are offering out there, or is it, or is there better perks with that job evaluation that they're offering out there to what a local authority or our sector can offer? It's just where we say we struggle sometimes, whereas I don't think they struggle because they seem to be doing really well. It's the balance, really. Thank you, Chair.
What I would say about recruitment, and I know there was a lot of concerns about the number of people, a number of agencies, local authorities and private, who were seeking to recruit. For our last 2 children's homes, for the one we've got in Monmouth and the one that it will be opening, we've restructured a home that was already in our possession, and we've just gone out for recruitment for that. We've had unprecedented number of of qualified, experienced care providers approach us from the private sector to come across to the local authority because of the instability now being created in the private sector. So they're not sure that they're going to have a job or what the government's agenda means. So we have been very fortunate in our last 2 rounds of recruitment to be able to capitalise on very, very experienced, good quality staff. So that's been a bonus for us.
Thank you. Councillor Howarth, do you want to come back, or you?
No, fine, Chair, thank you.
Okay. Diane, can I ask a follow-up question? This might be completely off the wall. If there is a private children's home within Monmouthshire, will they, after the Eliminate agenda, will they be able to operate attracting children from England, or is that completely off? Because of the Eliminate agenda, that will be not allowed. Thank you.
The government is working through this now, and I think these are some of the sticking points about how you regulate companies that sit outside of Wales. However, they're very aware of this, and I think there is a plan that there will be a small amount of children's homes that may take children from England, but that isn't clear what that actually is going to look like. But I'm part of some of the working groups for Eliminate through the children's heads of service. And what I'm aware of is that the government are very aware that that is potentially a loophole that would need to be addressed.
Thank you. I'm just aware that we've obviously got Monmouthshire children that are currently living in England in children's homes that we're looking to bring back with our new children's homes back to their local communities. So it's sort of vice versa, really. So thank you for that. Can I move on to Councillor Edwards, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair, for allowing me back in for a second go. Picking up on what Councillor Butler said earlier on, she was talking about the recruitment of carers. In the report, I mean, it's great that recruitment has marginally outstripped those leaving the role during this time. But can you tell us, I'm slightly concerned about, obviously people retire from being a carer, which is understandable, but you mentioned the words people resigned from being a carer. So can you tell us more about what type of person the recruitment is aimed at? And are you confident that the process of recruitment is robust enough in order to get the right people? I mean, after all, we all have to admit that it takes a special kind of person to be a carer, to commit to that kind of caring role. Thank you.
When we say resigned, whether you retire or whatever, it's called resignation, because you have to actually resign from and be presented to panel and to the agency decision maker, which is me, because I hold that role for Monmouthshire. So they all have to resign. So we call it resignation, whether they retire or not. What I will say is the issue about people who do resign from being a foster carer is exactly what you've just said. The process of becoming a foster carer is very different. And a lot of people approach us because they've spoken to somebody at an event or the Usk show, or they've seen our literature around Monmouthshire and they think this is something for them. This is a 6 to 8 months process. There's a huge amount of training. There's a lot of checks. And sometimes it can be a bit doom and gloom, because actually we have to be very honest what it's going to be like, particularly if you have your own children, particularly if you work, particularly if you care for your own grandchildren, because you may be having children with very complex needs that may impact your other families. So there are by nature people who drop out of that process as it goes through. What I would say, by the time you get to the end of that process, if we haven't put you off, we've done really well. But then actually when you've become a registered foster carer, the reality of having children in your home can be very different. So we have resignations from people who do say, and they are small, this isn't for me. I've had a number of children, it's not for me. Or we've had, most of our resignations may be, we've had people emigrate to America for work. We've had, because the male carer is employed and is working. We've had people move across the country, so they've gone to Cornwall for, life choices and things like that. So we are, but what we do is when we try to make sure that in that robust assessment and recruitment process and training process, we are very open and honest with people, so that by the time we haven't put them off and they do make it through the panel and they do start to have children, that actually our responsibility is to do that in a measured way, working out how's their experience been for you, what does that look like, so that we give them the best opportunity to be matched to the right child, to be cared for as carers for us, and to have a voice in this, so we can tailor that, because that's the business we have to be in.
Thank you. Like I said earlier on, it's a great strategy, but I was wondering perhaps in the context that you just said, perhaps a different word can be used rather than resigned, because it's such
it's a legal panel term, but what we could do is make it clearer in our strategies what that actually means for sort of more lay people.
Okay.
Can I just add to that answer as well, because I think it is really important, and particularly maybe even for any members of the public that are listening to this now or on recording, is that I have the privilege of meeting a lot of our foster carers, because we do the annual appreciation events, that we have the Christmas party, things like that. Again, trying to create that community that fostering community in the council, and the overwhelming majority are really dedicated in terms of what they do. So yeah, there's some that decide that it's not for them either now or at some point because of life changes or family changes for them, that it's no longer appropriate for them. But for the majority, they get a huge amount out of it, and there's a real variety of types of fostering placements. So I think that's important to emphasise that there's a number of families that take babies. They take babies and they give them that love and attention that is so vital in those first few months, that first year of life, that actually sets up the foundations for the future. And then they hand them on often to adoption or sometimes back to the birth family. But although the emotional wrench of them handing that baby back over is huge, the satisfaction they get from knowing that difference they've made, not just in those 12 months, that difference they've made for that entire person's life, it is really compelling. There are people that do just short-term respite placements. Mm-hmm. There are people that take sibling pairs. There are people that take older children. There are people that take mother and child placements. So we have children who have in our care that have come into our care pregnant or with a baby. So there's specialist carers that are looking after them. There's a whole range of different types of carer, and it is a very rewarding role for those people. And anybody that is considering that thinks that that spark their interest, please to get in touch with the team and just start that process of exploring what it means in practice and finding out more about it, and maybe talking to other foster carers and seeing if that's a journey that you want to go through, because for those people that do make it through that journey, it is a hugely rewarding process. So really want to encourage people to do that.
I would also say that actually one of the really lovely things is that when you actually see the carers, and they're all different ages, with the children, which is one of the benefits of our copy and catch up, is that you realise all human experience is there. That this is a real privilege to be able to see those people working with our children and affording that care in a very human way. So it is a really rewarding, if not sometimes exhausting, but isn't parenting.
Thanks both for giving us reassurance. That's all after my questions. It's going to seem like I'm nitpicking now, but I am a counsellor, I suppose. It's what we do best.
What you're supposed to do.
But just to finish from me anyway, looking back at the strategy again, and like I said, it's an excellent strategy with so much clarity as counsellor, but perhaps with a bit of context and explain what role she had as well. Thanks. Sorry, like I said, it was a bit of nitpicking, but...
I think that's really helpful, because when we looked at the quote, we thought, can we update the quote? And to be honest, we thought it is such a great quote. So context for that is fine. And in regards to Welsh identity, it is something that we part of our responsibility. But also, all of our children have their cultural needs met. So we do have English children. We have mostly Welsh children. We do have, but as we say, in regards to our unaccompanied asylum seeking, we have an awful lot of different cultures that we work very, very hard, because what we know is identity for a young person, particularly who's been in a care experience, who has care experienced or in a placement. Your life becomes very, very at the whim of other people. And we can talk about participation, and we can talk about making sure they're included. But a lot of our young people are not really able to participate. We can create opportunity for them, but because of their life journey, they're not. But what they really need to understand, and what we know, is that investment in life story work, life, and understanding who you are at your core is key to helping these young people become adults and understand who they are in the world. So actually we are quite passionate about the Welsh identity, but I get what you're saying, and very much we meet the cultural identity of all children to the best of our ability.
Thank you both. We're sort of drawing to a close now. Can I just ask a quick question. Unplanned interruptions of placements, is that sort of consistent, or are we getting better at actually preventing? I mean, I know if it's an unplanned thing, it sort of blows up, doesn't it? So, but I'm just wondering about the numbers of those, because I know from sort of years ago hearing from care experienced adults, you know, sort of horrific stories about sort of 20, 30, 40 placements through their lifetimes, really. So are we getting better at that? And I know that you've got lots of organisations like BASE and sort of other advocacy groups to actually support young people in their foster care placements.
We keep very close eye on the number of placements young people have, because we have to. It's one of our reporting key reporting points for Welsh Government, but also because it is key to stability for a young person. What we recognise, though, is that at this point in time, because of where we are in regards to the destabilised placement market, we haven't got a choice. So sometimes what will happen is a placement will collapse at very short notice, and what you have to do is physically put a child somewhere. But actually what we do is, this is when we have such good relationships with our foster carers, and we've now got our own residential homes. So what we're able to do is utilise staff to make sure that that support. So for some children, they may go to a carer for a week, and there is literally nowhere for that young person to be placed, and then they may go somewhere else for a weekend. But as soon as we can, we will stabilise it, and there is a huge team working for that young person to find an appropriate placement, whatever the cost, to ensure that they're in a stable, appropriate placement. It is a very huge task, but all of those placement moves are monitored and reported on. So we all know the ones who've had a collapse and perhaps a lot of movement, as opposed to the ones who are continuously breaking placements down, or placements are failing for them. So we are able to have a more targeted approach, and I think that's one of the fortunate things for being a fairly small local authority, is that we actually know our children very well.
Thank you. That's quite reassuring. I see that Councillor Strong has got his hand up, so I think that's probably the last question for this part of the agenda. So, Councillor Strong.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, in relation to Welsh identity, I think it's very important to keep that in. If you're a young citizen of Monmouthshire, at least part of your identity is Welsh. If you go to school in Monmouthshire, you will be taught Welsh in that school. If you're transferred to England, you won't be. And at least a knowledge at some level of the Welsh language is really important. If you're coming back to live in Wales, you know, many jobs specify that a knowledge of Welsh is an advantage. To be a full citizen, you need to understand the political organisation of Wales, about devolution, the Welsh Assembly, Welsh Government, and so on. So I would very much keep that in. It doesn't necessarily mean that you regard yourself as being Welsh rather than English or British or whatever, or if you're an asylum seeker from overseas, another identity altogether. But part of that identity is Welshness, and to play a full part in life, you need to be aware of that side of things.
Thank you. Does anybody want to come back on that, or is we just? Yeah. Okay. Can I just bring this sort of section of the agenda to a close? I think we've had a really good, thorough sort of scrutiny of the document. We've talked about how care experienced children are involved in the strategy, how they're involved in the new homes, and actually have some input into how other care experienced children will be supported into the future. We've looked at some of the challenges. Can I just clarify that the strategy will be reporting the action plan? Will there be a reporting back function to this committee or to Cabinet during the year, or is it sort of, how will that work?
6 monthly.
It's 6 monthly.
No, I thought so the strategy will be going to full council in March for formal adoption by the council. I think we said in the strategy that we'll be doing it's a 3-year strategy, so it'll be a mid-term sort of report. But clearly this corporate parenting panel meets 4 times a year, and they will be the main vehicle by which we're monitoring this. But if People's Scrutiny felt that they would also like to revisit this and to get progress update, I'm sure we'd be very happy if People's Scrutiny wanted that, but we haven't built that into the timetable.
Can I just take sort of feeling of the members of the committee? Is that something that the committee is happy with? Do we want it to be an annual thing, or would we prefer an update sort of every 6 months?
Chair?
Oh, Councillor Howarth, sorry, I didn't see you with hand.
I just wanted to be clear. When we spoke about the private sector and the December dates being cut off for applications and 1st of April, and then legislation actually hasn't been fulfilled or been signed off, there was quite a lot of things there with the major government, the Welsh government, not actually moving forward with some of the legislation. Is there any key risk to this council that we actually have with the private sector being dissolved from it, and it brings the risk to us as a council? Then we have to find the placements. And that's my point I'm making, is perhaps we need updates of when the government will actually sign off all these pieces that the senior officer said hadn't actually taken place yet, but is in the process. It's only my thoughts, Chair. Thank you.
I think that will probably come back to corporate parenting panel, won't it? Councillor Chandler?
I think in terms of the Illuminate agenda, I mean, it's now in legislation, because it was in the Social Care Act that was passed last April, I think. So the timetable is fixed in legislation. What we're saying about in terms of the interpretation of some of the regulations are still working through in terms of just how some of the definitions and procedures doing. But essentially, we know we have a roadmap. We know what's happening in that. So anything that is still unresolved is very much on the margins of that. So I don't think that's necessarily something that we have in terms of our responsibilities as corporate parents. I don't think there is anything that is unresolved at the moment that's going to impact on that. It's more on other issues and how it impacts on England. So I would be content with the situation as it is. I think in terms of feeding back to this scrutiny committee, as I said, very happy to come back, just reminding you that we have the annual report from the Chief Officer for Social Care that comes through to this scrutiny prior to it going to full council every year, and a lot of the detail and particularly the data will be incorporated into that fairly lengthy and comprehensive report. Corporate parenting panel, as I say, we're meeting regularly to review progress on this, and as we said, we're looking at so in 18 months' time, a sort of a mid-term report on progress on this, which will incorporate data, which I'd hope for this scrutiny committee that may or may not be sufficient for you in terms of your oversight. But again, if there are particular aspects of our corporate parenting work or our children's services work that you'd want to look at, that is also on the agenda if you wanted to review again where we are on foster care recruitment, for example, or where we are on our residential placements, which is clearly work in progress. Then, of course, those will be very specific items that we'd also be quite willing to come to this committee for. So, but entirely in your hands, and we'll go along with whatever you decide.
Thank you, Councillor Chandler. Perhaps that's something that we can think about and maybe have a discussion outside this because there's a couple of members that aren't actually here at the moment. So thank you for that. Can I thank you to both Diane and Councillor Chandler for bringing the strategy? And can I just take a sense of whether we're content to the strategy going to full council and with the recommendations in the report. I've got lots of nodding faces, so thank you. And thanks both. We've had a really, really interesting discussion, so thank you very much. We're just having a couple of minutes while we sort of change seats and things, so just bear with us.